Hello, my friend. Here is your clip on existential courage as looked at by the Stoics. So, of all the Hellenistic schools, the Stoics, which is a wide movement which includes Seneca, Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, developed a philosophy that is quite aligned with existential philosophy. It is, in fact, an early form of existential philosophy. You remember the Epicureans teach you to go inward, to make a smaller life in which you can be strong and confident and where you can enjoy the pleasures that are to be found within existence. Well, the Stoics thought that wasn't enough by any stretch of the imagination. They went back to the idea of Andrea, courage, meaning you need to find a way to remain fully engaged in the chaos of civic life, even if you're not in the military, although of course Marcus Aurelius was. You need to stand strong in the chaos we all have to confront in our ordinary, everyday existence. And for this, they had several concepts. The first concept you will recognize if you know Nietzsche. It is the concept of amor fati, although Nietzsche had his own interpretation of that, which I've spoken about elsewhere. For the Stoics, amor fati was the love of fate. It was the love of knowing that your life is not entirely within your hands, but is determined by fate, by circumstances, by society, by those around you, by things that aren't up to you, like the economy, what happens in your body, the actions of other people, the things other people say, and the fact that you will die. So they took the view that we need to build our strength in not despairing over these things, not trying to gain control over things we cannot control, but on the other hand, claim absolute sovereignty over our minds, over the way in which we engage with that fate. Epictetus said, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things. CBT has borrowed this idea completely. The second idea in Stoicism is memento mori. Remember that you will die. And this isn't a Heideggerian living towards death. It is actually practicing the idea of your death. It is actually taking risks. It is actually premeditating on the worst things that could possibly happen to you, instead of being just philosophical about it. They argued that a person who is terrified of their finitude can never be authentic, can never live a free life, and will always be a slave to safety, to comfort, and to sheer survival. So they had this thing called premeditatio malorum, which is thinking ahead of the worst possible things that could happen to you. It is a kind of psychological exercise where you intentionally imagine the worst possible outcomes to things, the loss of loved ones, exile, poverty, and your own agonizing death and torture. it is about toughening yourself up, and by facing the worst, getting ready to look for the best. So it's not a morbid fixation, but an act of existential courage to kind of desensitize yourself to the dangers you fear and stop yourself panicking because you have already imagined it all before. So this is about confronting the anxiety that stands against your existential courage. It's about getting yourself used to the anxiety. It's being counterphobic, if you like. It's also practicing struggles, battles, doing things you would be afraid of. It is standing aligned with difficulty and realizing that you could at any point take your own life if it all becomes too much, and therefore it's not so bad, you can take it, and then you realize you grow stronger and stronger. The other thing to remember about the Stoics is that their sense of courage is always linked to the sense of integrity. Integrity is what you have when you are lined up with the cosmos, and the cosmos is governed by logos. It is covered and governed by a rational order which you can figure out and you can be in line with. So if you allow reason to be there as the background, the backdrop to your whole life, then this feeling of courage comes to the fore because you now have stamina, because you know you are aligned with nature, with the cosmos, with the universe. And though the rest of society may descend into madness and chaos and tyranny and collective delusion, my friend, you will still find your northern star where it is always. The universe is much bigger than the human world, and so your integrity comes from lining up with the universe, and this is what gives you your capacity for authenticity. And that authenticity sets you away from the false values of the crowd, which the Stoics called doxa, the dogmatic ideas, the opinions, the fashions, the trends that the crowd would impose of you. You leave them behind and have the courage to stand alone as an ethical agent, and you develop your character to have the strength to do that ever more. You see the link with Nietzsche's work, you see the link with Camus' work, who said the only truly serious philosophical problem is suicide, for the only thing that matters is to know whether it is worthwhile living. The Stoic answer to that is, yes, you can commit suicide anytime you like, anytime you choose, and therefore you are not a prisoner of life. You are a voluntary participant, and you can live life in the way that gives you the maximum amount of agency, and that gives you this wonderful feeling that you can endure difficulty, that you never have to be afraid. You can always trust your own capacity for finding that alignment with the cosmos, and therefore your strength and your integrity, my friend. It's a pretty strong philosophy, and I will do a separate one on Marcus Aurelius in a bit.